So welcome once again to CloudForceSky webinar. Feel at home. I don't know how many of you are joining us for the first time. Who is joining us for the first time? Thank you, Fahima. I think Fahima. I hope I pronounced that right. Welcome to CloudForceSky webinar. Alvin as well, you're joining us for the first time. Mushai, you're joining us for the first time. Godfrey, welcome to CloudForceSky. So I'll just take a minute to tell you who we are. I'll take a minute to tell you who we are, and how you're going to join our community. So our community is a community of enthusiasts who are coming in to learn, grow, and actually share ideas together, and can also collaborate on projects. If you want to be one of our members, whether you're an expert, whether you're a beginner in cloud computing, you're welcome. And you can join us from our website at CloudForceSky. So just a minute, or one of my colleagues is going to share the link to join our community. So our members from CloudForceSky, kindly invite our new members who are joining us for the first time at CloudForceSky. So take a minute. You can share some coffee, some cookies. Just let them know that we are a friendly community and we like sharing ideas. So salimieni pale haraka haraka from the chat box. If you are a member of CloudForceSky, take a minute to say hi to any of our members who has just joined. One is Mushai, I think Alvin, Kwama, yeah. So kindly welcome them to the community. So Levis has shared our CloudForceSky website link, so you can follow us on YouTube as well. Then from the CloudForceSky community website, there is a button where you can click to join the community. Join community. So without wasting so much time, and I'm not seeing if the members have welcomed our members who are joining us for the first time, the webinar. I don't know if you don't like saying hi to new members, you don't want to invite them. But any of that aside, all our members are welcomed. Thank you. So today we have an interesting speaker who goes by the name Kadima Samuel. And Kadima is a DevOps engineer. He will be discussing the foundational principle of DevOps, exploring the various career paths available within DevOps field, also outlining the most relevant certification to pursue for career advancement. He will also be providing us with insights into the current and future job market outlook for DevOps professionals. So welcome, and I'll take this opportunity to welcome Kadima Samuel. I hope that you're in the meeting and you are in a position to take over. So kindly let's welcome our guest speaker, Kadima Samuel, either by reacting using the thumbs up or clapping. Thank you, Metrin. I see every one of you. Thank you, Patrick. So Samuel, Karibu, you can take over, leading us through the DevOps path.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. I can also see you.
Okay, good. So my name is Samuel Kadima, and I'm happy to be here. So I hope we're going to have a good time. I'll be talking about DevOps and what it is, and also the career paths and how the steps that you can take in order to become a DevOps engineer. So that is basically what I'm going to be talking about. So I'll share my slides and then we can be able to proceed. So at any point, if you have a question, feel free to ask a question. So you can just raise your hand and I'll be able to respond to your question. So you can also use the chat box, I believe, to raise your questions and I'll be able to respond. So you don't have to wait until the end unless, is that what you prefer, Janet?
Normally we prefer taking questions after the session, but however you like it, you're free.
Okay. So, yeah. So, let us get started. So, I can start by doing an introduction of myself. So, I'm a DevOps engineer, and I'm also the founder of Nairobi DevOps community. So, the slides I'm presenting here are slides I've used before. We have had a similar session before. So, that is what I'm presenting here. So, the agenda is first for us to be able to learn about what DevOps is, and then we can look at some of the DevOps tools that we have, and then we can look at the roadmap to becoming a DevOps engineer, and then we'll also look at the careers that are available for DevOps engineers. So let us get started. So what is DevOps? Does anyone know what DevOps is? Anyone who has interacted with DevOps before? Or has an idea of what DevOps is? You can respond on the chat. You can also share what you think DevOps is. So even if you've not interacted with it, and you can also probably raise your hand and talk. Yes, Ahmed.
According to my view, DevOps is a combination of two things: development and operation, which are carried out. Maybe what's an example of continuous integration, continuous deployment, DevOps company.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. So what you said actually makes a lot of sense. So DevOps is basically, I can see here, Ida as well, shared on the chat saying development and operations. Okay, that's interesting. You can see Patrick saying a practice of culture that seeks to bridge the gap between dev and operations to ensure seamless deployment of code. Godfrey says DevOps is generally connecting development to operations. Okay, so you guys seem to have an idea of what DevOps is, but basically DevOps is just a combination of people, practices, and tools that work together to help in the enhancing the speed of software delivery. So you guys, you utilize software, and when you're utilizing software, you want to utilize the latest features. You also want to utilize quality software. So for you to be able to access the best software and also to be able to utilize software features that are the latest is that can only be achieved when features are being deployed fast, and also when the software that arrives in production is quality software that does not have any bugs, software that is secure, software that can satisfy the user who is using the software. So DevOps basically works towards ensuring that you as the end user has access to the best software that you can have access to. So this is achieved through some things, and some of the things is first ensuring that DevOps engineers implement tools, utilize tools, and practices. So we have practices such as, let's say, utilization of configuration management. You have something like version control, we have something like containerization, orchestration. So we have all these practices that need to be set in place, and you are going to utilize specific tools within these practices. So for example, if you're you're implementing practices for containerization, you're going to think about tools like Docker. If you're talking about maybe configuration, you're going to think about Terraform or Ansible and such. So DevOps cares about that. So we have the tools, we have the practices that we need to set in place, and we also have a culture that has to be set in place. So the culture is about people that you're going to include in your organization to ensure that you can be able to implement DevOps successfully. So you're going to ensure that you're hiring the right team for you to be able to have these things to happen. So when you have the right staff and you're implementing the right practices, so these practices and tools allow you to create automations. And basically what you do is you eliminate the work, most of the work that would have been done by people manually, thereby increasing the speed through which things can be done, because people may be slow, people may be prone to errors and such. So all those things will lead into less quality software. So in order to get quality software, you have to think about automation and such. So these tools will allow you to be able to manage that and to utilize tools that can allow you to create automations that will make your work flow very seamless, and your software will be able to arrive very fast. It will also, in your process, you'll be able to allow people to collaborate more openly, and people will end up receiving the latest features very fast. So I hope that makes sense. Does it make sense? Okay. You can see Janet saying it makes sense. What about the rest? Are you guys seeing any sense in what I'm saying? Okay, good. I can see Ahmed saying yes, it does. So let us proceed. So this is what I've just been saying, where you're going to be focusing on the speed of software delivery, and you're going to be thinking about the culture, and the culture here is people, and you're going to implement the practices. And some of the practices I've talked about configuration management, I've talked about CI/CD is one of them as well. You're going to think about orchestration, containerization, so all those things. So those are the practices that you're going to think about. And once you think about the practices, now you need to utilize tools in order to achieve the goals that those practices require you to achieve. So you're going to think about the tools. So we'll talk about the tools in a few. And so the goal is just always to ensure that there is better software delivery. And the reason why you are doing better software delivery is to satisfy the users, to ensure they always have quality software, and they're always accessing software when they're needed to require the software. So before we go so far, maybe I can talk about why we have DevOps and why it exists. So in the past, we used to have different teams for development and operations, and these teams used to do their work separately, and probably teams were not even close to each other. So you have development team that is responsible for creating software, and this development team is agile in nature. So they create features after feature, feature after feature. And when they create the features, they give them to the operations team. The operations team is responsible for deploying the software and maintaining it in production. So these developers have no connection to the users of the application. It is operations people who are in touch with the people who are using the software. So when operation people go ahead and deploy software, for example, they can deploy software, and once they deploy the software fails. So if they come back to the developers and tell them your software is not working as expected, these developers can say it was working on my machine, and that leads to a rise of conflict. So they misunderstand each other, and they end up not having a good working relationship. So the other thing is these people in operation, they always know that every time we deploy something or we introduce updates, that is an opportunity for some of the features to fail. So what they do is they try as much as possible not to deploy new things. So they don't deploy new things because they want the system to remain as it is so that people can have the best experience. Remember, the goal is just to ensure people have the best experience. So they try as much as possible to give people the best experience, but as they do that, they're denying them the latest features, the latest updates that have been made. So the developers are wondering, why haven't our features that we've created been deployed? Because you've done a lot of work in this, yet the people in operations are not willing to release our software. So that brings about another conflict. So DevOps came in to remove this obstacle that bring about this conflict and barriers to communication. Because let's say there is feedback that is being collected in the operation side from the users or from the application, maybe something related to the speed of the code or just some features are not working. The operations people are not software developers, so they do not know much about that. So they may not even be able to communicate the right problem to the development team. So there is a communication barrier there. So this leads to the user having a bad experience because they're denied the latest features. They also denied the best quality software because sometimes if a developer, let's say there was a bug, that bug is not caught in time. It gets to production and now users are the ones who suffer out of a bad experience. So DevOps just ensures that we find a way through which we can be able to bridge the two. And we do this through automation of tasks, such that we can be able to automate everything in a way that everyone that is involved in the DevOps lifecycle, from where software is created to where software is operating in production, there is visibility of what is going on. So that way, we remove the communication barrier. We can all have visibility over the feedback of the software. At the same time, we can be able to automate checks that can be able to verify that the software is quality before it goes to production. So we're going to look at different ways in which you can be able to do this. And so far, I would like to hear about if there is any question before I continue. Am I making sense? Okay, good. So yeah, so one other thing that I can tell you about is now maybe how DevOps came about. So I've told you about the problem that existed and the solution. So how we arrived at the solution and how we are here now where we're talking about DevOps. So there is a guy called Michael Dehan. So he's the one who came up with this term DevOps. So he realized that these problems existed. So companies had separate development and operations team. And because of that, now we are having this problem, and he was thinking about a solution. So he decided to come up with a way through which you can be able now to have the automations and to have open communication and to have visibility through everything that is being done in the entire software lifecycle. So he decided to do conferences, and he was just doing conferences to educate people. So companies can attend, developers can attend the events, and when they attend the events, they can be able to learn about DevOps. So he did the first event. It was done in Belgium. It's called Gent in Belgium. So, and that is where DevOps now came up. So people, because we had, this was an event that was geared towards ensuring that development and operations team are no longer in disunity, are no longer having conflicts. It was trying to bring them together. So people decided to call it DevOps. And that is how it ended up being DevOps. And that is just a name that was given out of what it was trying to achieve. But now in depth, it's not just, you can't just say DevOps is just bringing together operations and development team, because there are many things that you are doing in order for that to happen. So yeah, so that is just a high level. If you talk about operations and development team, is just a high level of how that visualization of how the two things came in together. So that conference that happened is called DevOps Days. So it has been happening in various cities around the world. So basically, it happens to ensure that people learn about DevOps, people are able to showcase DevOps tools. And we also managed to do the first one here in Kenya. We did it in June. And it was a very interesting event where people came and they were able to learn about DevOps. There are various companies that were showcasing tools and such. Yeah. So that is all I can say about what we can learn about what DevOps is and how we came about, just to get to a point where we can talk about it. And maybe now I can just talk about DevOps tools. So we have a lot of DevOps tools. And that is why some people find it very challenging even to get into DevOps, because you realize before you get to DevOps, it's like you need to learn everything. You're learning a lot of things. So you need to be a software developer first. You also need to know networking, Linux. You need to know the cloud. So there are very many things that you're going to learn. So, but it is very possible to get started. So there are many tools, but of course, you don't need to use all tools. So for every practice, DevOps practice that you're going to interact with, or that you're going to implement, there are a number of tools, but you're going just to pick one. For example, I can take an example of something like CI/CD. So CI/CD is one of the practices. So for CI/CD, you can decide to use Jenkins, you can decide to use Circle CI, you can use Travis CI, you can use GitHub Actions. So there are very many tools that you can use, but you just need one. So you don't have to use several of a tool that specifies or fulfills a specific practice that you may need to implement. So let me just go through the different phases that we have in DevOps, in the DevOps lifecycle, and take you through the tools that you're going to use. So DevOps starts at planning. So when you're planning, uh, you want to know what you want to build, you want to know what you will need and such. So some of the things that are used for planning here, we have things like Jira, we have things like Trello, and we also have even coming up with the user stories and such. All those things are part of planning the UI design and you go code, you develop on your machine. You are going to think about version control. Now, after developing the code or while developing, you're going to think about version control. So you're going to push your code to version control. And as you're pushing it to version control, probably you want to be able to build your code and test it and verify that it's working. So you're going to have continuous integration. So continuous integration is the next phase that you're going to have. So in continuous integration, that is where you have tools such as GitHub Actions, you have Jenkins, you have tools that are CI/CD tools in the cloud. So continuous integration, that is CI, but we have CI/CD. So CI is where you are now just integrating code in GitHub, probably from the feature branches to a main branch, if something is working as expected. And then you go ahead to deploy. So here in deploying, we also have, so what you're going to create is a pipeline. So you started by planning, you wrote your code, and then after you've written the code, you're going to push it to a version control system such as GitHub. So once you've pushed it to that place, CI/CD is going to pick up from there. Continuous integration is going to pick up from there, and then continuous delivery. So continuous integration is whereby you are able to integrate the changes, test it, and so you're basically doing static tests, and you're also testing for coverage and ensuring that your code has been tested. A good percentage of your code has been tested, and also ensuring that the tests are passing. So if the tests are passing, now you need to check if test every code that has been written has been tested, so that you don't have things that have not been tested going to fail in production. So after you've done that, this phase of continuous integration is going to end in the creation of an artifact, and this is probably an image. So it's just an image that probably you're going to containerize and be able to deploy. So the release pipeline in this deploy phase is going to pick up from the image that you've created and environment where you want to deploy it. So you can decide to deploy it in a testing server or elsewhere where it's not going to go directly to the users. And that is, we call that continuous delivery. So when you need to be able maybe to test first or be able to interfere with it first before it goes to production. And then we have continuous deployment where you go directly into deploying it into the cloud. So once it's in the cloud, what you're going to do is go ahead and monitor. So when it's operating, you're monitoring. So you're going to, depending on how you've deployed your software, there are various monitoring tools that you're going to have. So if it's on Kubernetes, probably you're going to have something like Prometheus and Grafana that you're going to use there. And if you deploy elsewhere, let's say in the cloud, there are very monitoring tools on every cloud provider that you can integrate with and check and see if your software is working as expected, collect feedback, and once you get feedback, in case something is not working, in case resources are being consumed more than expected, if the code maybe is slow, you need to go back to planning. So that's why you are seeing in this cycle, you operate, you continuously get feedback, you go back to planning, and you repeat the entire process. So it's a DevOps life cycle. So that is about the life cycle and the tools that are involved in the various areas. And I can now go to the roadmap, I believe. Is there any question? So let me go to the roadmap. So yeah. So how do you get started, and when do you call yourself a DevOps engineer? So DevOps has many tools, as I've said, and there are many things that you need for DevOps. So because you're going to work in a DevOps is bringing together, as you've said, software and operations. So operations, this is what Linux administrators used to do, the operations part. Software engineers or system administrators used to do the operations part. And then we have the software engineers who are doing the software part. Now you are wearing both titles. So the people in operations were people who are doing networking and Linux administration, and people in dev were doing software engineering. So you need first to understand Linux administration. So that is the basics of DevOps. So the basics of DevOps, you need to understand Linux administration. You need to understand networking. So Linux administration, you just need to understand how Linux works, the operating system. You need to be able to work with it because you're going to be issuing, writing scripts, automating scripts that are going to interact with the operating system. So, and here what you need to learn also is Bash. So because you're going to create automations that are going to interact with the operating system, you're going to learn Bash. And then networking, because DevOps, in DevOps, you're working in a distributed system. So you have different parts of an application, features being deployed independently. So you have microservices. So all these things need to communicate. So you need to be able to understand how networks work so that you can be able to work without any difficulty. And then since you're going to ship software, you also need to understand software engineering. So the three that I've mentioned, the first three, Linux, administration, networking, and software, these are the things that are a must-have for a DevOps engineer. So if you're any difficult, so and then so for software engineering, you can just learn about software, the entire process, know about software, backend, front end, and databases, how they work, and you should be able to deploy software even without implementing DevOps. And then after that, now you'll appreciate that you can be able to learn DevOps, and that you can now see how it's going to make work easier. Yeah. So after that, you can learn infrastructure as code. So these others that are after, so Linux, administration, networking, and software, those are the ones I recommend that you learn first. So after you've learned that, the rest, there is no order for learning the rest. So you can decide to go either way. But these are the basic ones that you need. So the next thing you may need is infrastructure as code. So infrastructure as code, these are tools that you're going to use here are things like Terraform. You're also going to use something like Ansible. So you can learn one tool, and then once you're done with one, you can learn another one. So because they have their own advantages and strengths. So you can also learn CI/CD. So for CI/CD, you can just pick one tool as well. You can decide to pick Jenkins or GitHub Actions or any other and be able to learn that. You learn about how to create containers. You can learn about Docker. And then for orchestration, you can learn a tool like Kubernetes. Kubernetes will allow you to now work with containers and be able to manage containers in a way that they can automatically scale, they can automatically heal and such. And then you remember in our roadmap, we ended up in monitoring and collecting feedback. So you have to also learn about monitoring and logging. And here is where maybe if you're in the cloud, so you can have things like FluentD. You can also have things like Prometheus and Grafana that you can be able to use. And then you also need to learn about collaboration and communication tools. So these are things like Jira, Trello. So you don't have to know much about this, but you just need to be aware of how they work. And then after that, so after you've learned this, that is when you go ahead and do some hands-on projects. So I normally don't encourage somebody to rush to do a certification before you have the skills. So I encourage people to first learn and gain the skills, and then just go to do the certification as an addition. So because a certification will not be helpful if you do not know anything, and you're also going to have a very hard time learning or trying to do a certification if you do not know what you are doing, or you're learning too much and you're overwhelmed because there are many gaps in what you're learning. Maybe you don't know Linux, you only know software and such, and you're trying to do a certification. So it's just good for you to know the basics before you go and do the certification. So that is what I can say. And some of the career paths that you can get into. Of course, we have, and we have more. So these are just some. So you can be a DevOps engineer, you can be a DevOps consultant, a trainer, a release manager, DevOps evangelist, architect. You can be also an SRE. You can be also a platform engineer. So we also have platform engineering nowadays. So those are the major ones that you can be able to get into, and also cloud engineering. So I've not mentioned that. So in cloud and DevOps are very intertwined. So if you have DevOps skills, you can easily even go to the cloud as well. So that is it, and I welcome any questions.
So the floor is
Yes.
open for any question. Samuel, I see one question. Somebody has raised their hand. That is, let me check. Was it Farmer?
Yeah, it was me.
Farmer here.
Yeah.
Kindly ask your question.
Yeah, so my question was on the part of software engineering, what type of languages or what amount of languages do you need to learn, and how much do you need of it do you need to know?
So I think the language I will recommend for software engineering is Python, because if you look at any DevOps role, they will ask you if you know any scripting language, and the scripting language will be either Python, Bash, or Go. So, but at the top of the list, of the language editing software, but at the same time, you can use it for creating automations. Have I answered you fully?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
That's enough.
Anyone else? Okay. Yes, Ahmed.
You said that learning software engineering is a must. What if I'm that way that I'm not interested in software engineering, but I can come out as maybe as a DevOps engineer, inshallah, and be in a group. As you said that it's about operations and development and operations, right? Kumaanisha these are two teams that come together. Maybe let's say that in a workshop, kuna watu wa software engineering and there are other parts of people who are doing mambo na deployment. Can I I'm trying to say that naweza kwa tu nimefanya DevOps peke yake, ndio sisemi na mambo ya software engineering, wakuwa na develop hizo ma application zao, alafu sasa mimi kufika time ya kudeploy the consult me. Inawezekana hivyo ama?
So I don't think I've heard you. So I don't know if Janet, you've heard him.
I also did not hear him clearly. I don't know if it could be the mic you're using. You're not clear. So I request you to kindly come up with the question again, if you don't mind, kindly. Hamed?
Yes.
Okay, you're still struggling. I don't know if maybe it's one of your devices, your audio device. If you're connected to a mic, yeah, now that's good. Thank you. You can go. Yes, we can hear you. Proceed.
Okay, so I have this question. I was thinking under system, we said that the DevOps is about the applications. Maybe I'm that person who's not interested. Can I still work like developing the websites? Who's not done anything about software engineering?
You have to understand software as a DevOps engineer because you need to be able to package that software and automate its deployment. So if you do not know how software works and how it is created, you will not be able to interact with it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I
so you cannot.
Can I another question?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I've seen you talk about networking. So do I need to have the basics or should I cover everything in networking, or what are the specific parts of networking that I should be knowing?
So you just need to understand the networking basics, similar to Linux. So you don't have to be an expert in Linux because you have a system administrator who is fully dedicated to that work. So you just need to understand how everything works. So for example, if you understand about IP addresses, subnet, so those are very important things for you to understand. Work with distributed systems without an issue.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Alex.
Okay, my question to you is, hope I'm audible enough.
Yeah.
So, what is the real measure of DevOps engineer? Is it what they can do, or the amount of tools that they really know or master? Because I realized you have to learn so many tools for you to get the job done. So when you're applying for a job, do they really measure on what you can really do? Because the only thing you can show on your portfolio is maybe CI/CD pipelines that you build something also, or maybe the tools that you already know, like the tools that you already know how to use also.
So it's not the number of tools. I don't think there is any job that will look at the number of tools. So it's the skills, but the skills for DevOps covers the DevOps are covered within the DevOps practices. So you should at least know at least one or two tool in those areas. So if you be able to software works, you should be able to understand containerization. You can containerize an application. You can you don't have to understand every tool, but you can be able to do that. You can be able to, depending on the job. There are some jobs that maybe may not require you to do infrastructure as code, but a DevOps engineer will either be doing infrastructure as code or doing these other things, but they are creating automations. They are dealing with software. So just you need to be ready for the market. You need to understand the cloud. So I didn't mention the cloud. So because applications are going to run in the cloud, you need to understand the cloud as well. So you need at least to pick one cloud. Not all cloud to be multi-cloud, because you don't know. You can go to this company today, they are deploying on Azure, the next one on AWS, the next one on Google Cloud, or they have services deployed on all clouds. So you should be able to do all that. And they may be having some of the things being deployed on their own premises servers. So you should be able, that is why you need now to understand even infrastructure a little bit, so that you can be able to deploy software anywhere they want it to be deployed. You should understand anything that is used to automate that deployment. Yeah.
Okay, so my second question is,
Yeah.
so you say you're supposed to be well versed with the software, or more
So it
focused on the
is
back end.
better if you understand the entire process. So if you can be able to understand the full stack, you don't have to be an expert in full stack, but you understand, because you're not going to create software as a DevOps engineer, but you're going to work with software. So you need to understand software. So it's better you don't know whether it will be front end or back end. So you just need to understand the entire software.
Okay, so my last question. So when you say learn networking, that is basics of networking. What type of networking are you talking about? This about the physical networking or the networking in the cloud? That is software-based networking.
So I think the
Because
best
that
thing you can do is the physical networking, because that will allow you to learn the basics. And then when you learn the cloud, you're still going to learn about the other networking, because now you see where it becomes important. Once you understand this basic networking, the traditional networking, once you understand that, all the other, because you've learned it early enough, by the time you go to learn networking in the cloud, you understand it. So you're not struggling to figure out anything about networking in the cloud. When you go to Kubernetes, for example, and you're learning networking in Kubernetes, you understand everything about networking in Kubernetes, because you already have basics. If you learn about containers, they have networking, you'll understand that. But if you ignore networking, the basics of networking, and you just go to learn those things, you'll have a very hard time in learning those tools. I hope I'm making sense.
yeah makes a lot of sense. Sorry, I have so many questions. So my last and fourth questions. So uh, there's containerization and there's infrastructure as code. So now, when do you think, or at what point do you get to know now I'm ready to learn Terraform? Because you cannot start infrastructure as code learning Terraform. You also cannot start learning containerization and then you just jump into Kubernetes. Like, when do you think you're ready to start jumping into such?
Okay, so I think that is not a straightforward question for everyone. So people have different backgrounds. So there is somebody who is a system administrator, they want to get into DevOps. there is somebody who is a software developer, they want to get into DevOps. So the easiest way, basing on where you are at, let's say you are a system administrator or a network engineer. So if you're a network engineer, what you need to do, probably you can think about how do I automate the provisioning of my networks and such. So I will think about how I can use Terraform or Ansible. Those can be my first tools to learn about how to create this automation. And then after that, I can go into the tools that I can decide even to go to learn about the cloud. Or after that, I go and learn another thing. Basing on where I'm at, the easiest path that I will have the easiest time learning. So there is another person who is a software engineer. That person pushes code to GitHub, or they are already utilizing version control. So that person can think about CI/CD because that picks up from GitHub. They can also think about, because as a software engineer, you also have to package your code and deploy. They can learn about containerization. So their path can look like that. And then once they've learned containerization, they can go and learn Kubernetes, learn the cloud, or learn the cloud, then Kubernetes. And then after they have done that, they go ahead and maybe learn the other tools that are too foreign for them. After they have strengthened things that are close to what the knowledge they already have. So the roadmap that I shared is for someone who is starting from zero. But if you're not starting from zero, you can look at what you already understand and just piece in the things that are the easiest for you to understand, or things that can add value to your role currently, things that can improve on your skills in your role, and then you go towards the things that you don't know. Make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Okay, yeah, just proceed. I'll ask mine later.
Okay, Ida.
Thanks, Kadima, for that presentation. I have two questions.
Okay.
Which extra tools does one need to learn to become a DevSecOps? And then the other one, if someone has attained skills in DevOps, which is the best certification to take that can be recognized internationally?
Oh, okay. So your first question was about DevSecOps. So, okay, so for DevSecOps, you're just going to learn about security. And you see, DevOps, when we heard about DevOps was just about ensuring that software gets to production. And what was happening is security was being considered at the end. So after you've gone through the entire DevOps life cycle, the end will be security checks and then production. But now, by that time, probably there are some things that will fail that would have been handled earlier. Would fail the security checks that would have been handled earlier. So DevSecOps is just trying to bring security into DevOps. So every step of the pipeline. So if you are in the phase of testing, you're also testing every small bit. If you create an image, you test it as well for vulnerability. So you have a number of tools that you're going to get all through. So one of the tools that is used is SonarQube. So you can that is used maybe for static tests and such with security. So you can test for dependencies, see if the dependencies are secure. The ones that you're using in your application, you can test for the image and see if it's also secure before you containerize your application. So you have all that automation in your pipeline. So the second question was about what?
Best certification to do
Okay.
once you've attained the skills.
Okay, so the certifications that you're going to do are now related to the different things that you need for DevOps. One of them, you need Linux knowledge. So there is no one certification that carries everything about DevOps. So there are separate certifications that you'll do. So you need to do the Linux, you can do LFCS, Linux Foundation System Administrator certification. You can do CCNA. So once you have that, maybe you can do Kubernetes, you can do CKA, Certified Kubernetes Administrator. And then that is if you have some knowledge with Kubernetes. But if you don't have any knowledge, you can start by doing KCNA, which is the basic one. And then after that, you can do CKA, which is Kubernetes Administrator. So with that, you can do something like Terraform Associate for infrastructure as code. So I think with those certifications, you're good enough for you to be able to work with, you've understood infrastructure as code, and you also do cloud certification. So any cloud, so you can do AWS, you can do GCP or Azure. Cloud computing is just cloud computing. So just do the cloud engineer level. So you can do the basic level, like the practitioner or cloud practitioner on AWS, and then do cloud architect associate, or do Google Cloud Digital Leader, and then do Associate Cloud Engineer, or do Azure Foundations, and then do Azure Administrator. So once you have that knowledge, you can be able to work with the cloud. So those are the certifications that I would recommend. But you don't have to go and do all cloud certifications. Just pick one to understand. Yeah. The goal is to understand cloud computing. Do you feel answered, Ida?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Alex?
In conversation about the cloud, so let's say I'm building my application and I want to deploy it. So as I'm deploying it, because of finances or so, because you see you're an indie developer, decide to go for the cheapest option, which is DigitalOcean. So a month or two, you play around with DigitalOcean, you know a way around it. So, and then when you're applying for your job on the CV, you write that you have experience in cloud. And then during an interview, you are asked, maybe can you explain to us you don't have experience in AWS? The skills learned in one cloud environment, specifically maybe low budget cloud environment like DigitalOcean, and maybe Vercel also transferable to maybe GCP, Azure, or AWS.
Sorry?
I'm saying if you're to write on your CV that you have experience in cloud and specify that you have experience maybe in just specifically DigitalOcean, not AWS, does that really lower your chances of getting that developer job or that AWS that DevOps job that you are applying for? Can it really deter you from getting a job? That's my question.
Okay, so what I think is, I think most jobs, they will say cloud, even if they're preferring a specific cloud for DevOps, because DevOps role is not a cloud role. DevOps role is a DevOps role. So if you understand cloud computing, you're good enough. So they will ask, mostly it will be AWS/GCP/Azure, because those are the ones that the biggest cloud providers in the world. But we have other cloud providers. So if you have any skill in cloud computing, that skill is what you're going to talk about. So you don't have to go and lie and say you have skills in AWS. So just go and say, me, I have skills in this cloud. I understand cloud computing. I understand that we have, for example, virtual machines in the cloud. We can have virtual private cloud networking. We can have storage in the cloud and such things. You understand those core things. So most jobs, you can learn some things on those jobs. So you don't have to lie and say, I have AWS or GCP or anything. Just go with the one you have. If you have cloud computing knowledge, that is what you put on your CV. Makes sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Thanks.
Yeah, but it's important. Even if you decide to use DigitalOcean or to use any other cloud, we have standardized certifications. So, for example, go and do any of the certifications that are available about the cloud. They will allow you. The reason why you see these employers even putting there something like GCP or Azure or AWS is because they know if you've done any of these clouds, you understand cloud computing, and now you can prove that is possible. Especially if you're starting. If you're not starting, you don't need certifications. If you have work experience. But if you're starting out, you can do the certifications. Just go deploy your things in DigitalOcean, but just learn something that people will know. This person knows about maybe capital expenditure, they know about operation expenditure, and they understand all the basics. They know about migrations, how you can migrate to the cloud. They understand those things. So they, even if they're not very technical, we know if they've done these certifications, they can be able to go ahead and they can learn anything related to the cloud about how we deploy our software, and they will be able to work with that. Any other question from anyone?
So, Samuel, we have a question from the chat box from Victor. Victor is asking, what projects can you recommend for one to upgrade skills in DevOps?
Okay. So, yeah, and I can see Denson has also mentioned Angani. So Angani is also a cloud provider here locally. So you can check them out. So the skills that anyone can, so the skills is just so we've talked about different things that you need to learn. So you can learn Linux, you can learn networking, and you can learn all those things. So the projects will depend on what you want to achieve first at different phases. So you can start maybe by creating a CI/CD pipeline, and in the CI/CD pipeline, try and integrate communication. For example, you want people in a team to be able to be notified. Let's say during the deployment, if anything has failed, you've integrated that. You've integrated some tests. So within the pipeline, so people can be able to test live. So immediately I push something and it's not quality, it should fail. If it's quality, it should pass. So I should be able to get that, and I should get a report. So you can integrate with something like Slack. You can integrate with, is it Microsoft Teams? Microsoft Teams is a video thing, or is it something like Slack?
Video conferencing.
Collaboration too.
Oh, so you can integrate with anything that is an equivalent of Slack, something where you can be able to, people can be able, a team can be, where a team can collaborate. You can integrate with that. So you can just decide to containerize an application. So when you're going through that journey, you think about what improvements you need to make. So you containerize an application, think about now about security of that container, try and apply that. Think about how you can be able to, let's say, even reduce the size of this container so that it can be able to, it can spin up faster in production. You're not going to have delays because it's spinning up very slowly. And then Kubernetes is very important. So you learn that as well. So you can do Kubernetes projects as well. So those are the main ones that I can recommend. You can also do Terraform or Ansible projects. So you just take any project and you try to provision it. The infrastructure, you can provision it using Ansible or Terraform. So when you're dealing with Ansible, probably you may also need to learn virtualization a little bit so that you can be able to work with that. Yeah. But you need to scope yourself according to maybe the specific practice that you're going to learn about. If it's a CI/CD, if it's infrastructure as code, and then you look for a tool within that, and then you do projects. You learn and then you do a project on it.
Okay, do we have more questions? So as they think about a question, I'm going to ask a question on behalf of my learners. Some of them are here. And when it comes to DevOps, if a learner feels like they have foundational skills and have done some bit of projects and they're trying to penetrate into the market, what is the salary range, especially for a beginner, intermediate, and expert? That is, in your own opinion, as a DevOps engineer.
Okay. So I think the salary range is just similar to what we have on developers or other tech fields. So for beginners, probably something between maybe 80 and above. So, and then Yeah, so that is what I can say for beginners. That could be the range, but it depends on companies. So there may be companies that are paying lower. There are those that are paying higher for beginners. So that is just the average of Kenya. But for companies that are external companies, they may be paying more. So it may be entry level, but you're being paid even 500,000. So depends on the company.
Thank you. I think that is well answered. So do you have any more questions? I see that we've exhausted our allocated time for the webinar. And if we don't have any more questions, first of all, I would like to thank you, Samuel, for finding time to join our webinar. I know your schedule might be quite busy, but you just found time to come and share the insights that you have. Thank you. That is from Cloud4Sky. Also, a big thank you to everyone who has been able to attend our webinar today. Our recording will be available on YouTube if you want to follow up on something that you missed. So our Sarah is going to share some of the links to our YouTube, our LinkedIn, and our website if you want to join our community. So I don't know if we have a parting shot from our presenter, Ile Amunsho.
Oh, okay. So what is my parting shot? So I just encourage people, especially those who are starting out, to be able to know that it's possible. So you learn one tool after the other. So you don't have to become a DevOps engineer when you're learning the first tool. So it's a journey. So you learn tools and you be patient. So there is no career that will become an expert without patience. So, and they're very, DevOps is a promising field. So you just ensure that before you get there, you are also willing to put the work and to be patient so that you can also get the good salaries that people talk about. The other thing, I can tell you also to join Nairobi DevOps community. So you can visit, for us, you can visit our LinkedIn page. You'll be able to see, so we have a LinkedIn page. We also have a WhatsApp group. So let me see. Let me just 1 second. I believe this slide may be having something. So, but the WhatsApp, so you can join LinkedIn, scan this, and you can join Twitter. So this WhatsApp link is a group that is full already. So, but you can join, at least follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. So let me see if I can be able to share the link for WhatsApp. I'm trying to load WhatsApp web. Yes, we also have events for DevOps, and you can be able to learn from people in the DevOps field within the community, and also interact with people in the community and network. So I'll share the link once it's available.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. We appreciate. And with that, I wish everybody a blessed night. That is from CloudForce. See you in the next webinar. Bye bye.